Recording in progress.
Welcome everyone to our strength conditioning class. So this morning we will be stretching, we will be working out, and then we will be cooling down. And then if you're with me later on at 10 o'clock, we will mainly just be stretching. So full body workout today, nothing too intense, just light equipment or body weight. Okay, and listen to your body. Any movements that feel off or unusual or just cause some weird sensations or pains, you could always skip those or ask if you could do an alternative movement. I'll try to find one, but you must speak up. Otherwise, I have no idea if you're struggling or not, so just let me know. But let's go ahead and start with our warm-up. So let's start by looking left to right. Just light stretching. I gotta do some laundry today. I don't like mixing my workout clothes with my regular clothes sometimes because since I sweat quite a bit, like I sweat more than like your average person up and down. When you sweat, there's salts release and then it dries up, and when it dries up, it could, if there's a lot of rubbing, sometimes it could ruin the material. Neck circles. So what I usually do, I usually have a bucket, and I, after I'm done wearing the clothing, after I've showered, I soak the clothes in the bucket to kind of get rid of the salt, and then I let them to air dry, and then I just, make a pile of that clothes, and now it's time to wash that pile. But yeah, but not just for that switch. If you happen to sweat a lot, this is even more important with your walking or running shoes, because your running shoes specifically, if you're aware of those, snow angels, a lot of the material on the top side of a running shoe or a walking shoe, it's mesh, which is really breathable. But again, if you get sweat and the salt calcifies on that, next time you put it on, that mesh material hardens a bit. So over time, it just becomes brittle, and that's when the shoes get little tears. So I bring that up because I also soak my shoes with the water hose and let them air dry. So just keep that in mind. Bring that right arm across. But what I usually do, I take the insoles out, and then I soak them with the water hose. I soak the top of the shoe, the inside of the shoe. Sometimes I clean them because I don't like the dusty look on them sometimes. But the dirtier they look sometimes, the more hardcore you look too. So you having dirty shoes looks good on your half too. But I always do that just so. I've never had issues with the mesh, but I remember when I worked at a running store, sometimes we would get folks, upset or just bummed that their shoes were falling apart, and it was because of, for that reason, the sweat on the mesh just hardens. So, just a little tip. Let's go left to right, trunk rotation. So today we're 2 days out from my race, so that means I get to carbo load today. So I'll probably have a pizza later today. And I'm having one tomorrow too, so it's one of my top 3 foods, so looking forward to dinner tonight. Let's do our ab circles. Big hula hoops. Big giant hip circles. So Ella, I think you might remember. I think Ella might have been the only one that experienced this with me in my early Zoom days. But I remember, I think there was one day back in summer of 2020 where there was like a 1 p.m. class, and it was hot. My garage was hot, switch, and it was just Ella and I in Zoom. And I think I think it was me by myself for the first 10 minutes, and then I was just like, should I log off? Like, no one's here. And then Ella logged in like 10 minutes after the start. So Ella still showed up, even though she was a little bit late, but she was quad stretch. But she was still there. And I think I asked her, like, hey, like, do you want to work out? Like, do you not? And I forget what we decided. But anyways, I bring that up because I had that moment yesterday with my Irvine Valley class. I had one student in there, and she's very sweet. Like she doesn't talk very much, but yesterday she was like, "Professor, if you like, I could just watch the recording, and I'm okay with that." And I was like, "No, like like let's do at least because it's an hour and 15 minutes long for that class." I was like, "Let's do at least half an hour, and let's reassess then and see how you're feeling." And she said, "Okay," and yeah, sure enough, we start with the warm up, and someone else logged in. So it was 3 of us yesterday. So we still did the whole session, but it just reminded me of the very first days of our online classes here. I don't know if you remember those days, Ella. Let's grab our ankles and up.
Yeah, I do remember because I couldn't run away. I was the only one in the class.
Yeah.
Sometimes there were just 2 of us.
Yeah, and the other person was probably my older sister. So.
Right.
Yeah, I remember on those first few days, my sister would log in quite a bit. So hips up and down. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and just stretch our calves a little bit. So I want you to just lay your feet flat, so the top of your feet are fully exposed, and then we're just gonna sit on our heels. Okay. Again, we don't want to irritate our foot, so only do these if they're comfortable. You should feel that stretch on the lower part of your leg. So from your ankle to right below your knee, you should feel that stretch. Again, it shouldn't be painful. If it is, just don't do this, because I could tell you, like a year ago, this was one of those stretches that would irritate me, and I wouldn't do. So, and then this one specifically, now you tuck in your toes underneath your feet. So now part of your foot is exposed, most of your foot, but now you have your toes tucked in, and this is gonna stretch out your arches. So. And relax. Alright, very good. So again, workout for today. I think we'll go with supersets of upper body, lower body. So just 2 movements per superset, and we'll try to repeat each one. And again, everyone's probably not feeling the same way. I know I'm not today. So just go based on your energy level. We'll be doing sets of 8 to 12. Okay, so if you're having an off day, try to do 8. If you don't feel that great, then just do whatever you can. And if you're feeling great, let's go with 12 repetitions. We're doing 2 sets of everything, so go ahead and grab your equipment. Have that nearby. We will probably be on our feet most of the time, or using the chair. Okay, so we might skip the yoga mat today. I think we'll use the yoga mat quite a bit over the weekend. So all right. Okay, so we'll start on the lighter side today. We'll start with like a lighter first set. So initially we'll just go bicep curls. Okay, bicep curls, and then we're gonna go with eccentric calf raises. So that's going to be calf raises with the pause at the top for 2 seconds, and then we drop back down. Okay? So that's going to be our 2 movements right now. So grab your dumbbells. Pretty easy set to start off. We're here. And give me 8 to 12. So again, all the way up, all the way down. We'll save some of the larger muscle groups on the legs for the weekend, because we'll do some of those on Friday and Saturday. I'll probably go really light on Saturday for myself, just because I'll be racing later that afternoon. But just full range of motion. Make sure we're breathing, exhaling as you're opening, inhale as you're closing. And do 3 more. Alright, and with the same weight, you don't have to put them down. We're going to do eccentric heel or calf raises with the pause at the end. So heels up, 1, 2, and then down. Okay, so 10 to 12. So we're, as the muscles are shortening, the tendons are activating. We're trying to make the tendons stronger. Usually our muscles, they develop or adapt fairly quickly to change, but our tendons don't. It takes longer for our tendons. So, more common injuries happen in our muscles, but more serious injuries happen in our tendons. So you just wanna, these pauses is what helps the tendon get stronger over time. The faster stuff is for your muscles, but the pauses, slowing it down, helps the tendons. That's why we switch days here and there sometimes. All right, 1 minute rest. So again, we're gonna repeat that set. Some days we'll go just high repetitions, quicker movement. Like our cardio days, it's more muscles, more joints. So when we do air squats with long pauses, really working on those tendons to fatigue them. So yeah. Morning, Doris. Could go ahead and start that second set. Not like we need too much rest for these smaller muscle groups. So again, 8 to 12. So again, these we want to slow down as well. Okay, and then our calf raises. So when you're ready, you could just transition to the calf raises. Yeah, so I just been nerding out with, stuff on research for muscles and growth and muscle endurance and injury prevention. So I was reading and following up on this series of studies, and pretty much the studies were looking at what puts you at risk of injury. If it's, they pretty much had like 3 different groups or 3 different factors they were looking at. They were looking at higher intensities. So pretty much, let's say, I'll use running for an instance. So let's say with running, if you're used to, let's just throw this number out there. If you're used to running 10-minute miles, right? So that's just a basic number. Put those down. 10-minute miles, and you're used to running maybe 10 miles a week, and your longest run for the week, let's say it's 4 miles. Okay, so just think about that: 10 minutes a mile, 10 miles per week, and your longest run of the week is 4 miles long. Let's assume you run 4 days a week. Now, the biggest factor that contributes to injury is changing your running pace from 10 minutes to like 9 minutes or 8 minutes. So they saw that the intensity, if you make that a priority and change that up, sure, it could get you more fit, but you're also more likely to get injured. And then the next factor that puts you at risk is to increase that 4 mile run to like a 5 mile run or a 6 mile run too fast or too soon, if that makes sense. So if you don't take your time, and this week you do 4, next week you do 5, the week after you do 6, and you just start doing that, that's the next biggest factor that contributes to injury. And the safest approach would be to just, in general, for the whole week, increase your mileage. So you're probably better off, if you want to start improving, going from 10 miles one week to maybe next week to doing 11 or 12, and then maybe the following week 13, maybe 14 the week after. So that's the safest approach if you're trying to get more fit and stay healthy. But all of them are going to contribute to get you more fit, but that's the one to keep you the healthiest, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So, and you could apply that to almost anything that comes with fitness. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about, oh, well, you know, I'm used to doing my 30-minute walk, but today I only have 15 minutes to do my walk. So instead of walking at my regular pace, I'm going to start running harder. Like, be careful, because that little intensity change could put you at risk if you do it often enough. One session might not do it, but if you do 20 of them, they might. So stuff that I wish I knew a little bit earlier. We're gonna do shoulder raises, lateral raises here, and we're gonna go with oblique crunches here. Okay, ready? So 12. But nonetheless, I mean, everything you should be practicing if you have goals to get more fit or faster or go further. It's just in moderation. Because sometimes people may do one of the wrong things first, or prioritize the wrong thing first, and that's when we could run into problems. So just things to consider. That's why a lot of people get injured in January and February with their New Year's resolutions. Okay, and then we're gonna do 10 dips. So I'm just sliding this left hand down my side and holding this other way as it's coming up. Ella, this is a serious question. I'm not trying to be funny, but have you ever like injured with your singing, like your tonsils or like your throat or your jaw locked up or anything like that before? Switch. Ella's napping right now.
No, I really haven't had injuries. I have to take care of my vocal cords and not yell or scream or like at a ball game.
Oh yeah.
And when I'm doing a festival choir, we sing sometimes 6 hours a day in rehearsals.
Whoa, 30 seconds.
And so we're told not to talk when we're outside of rehearsal or we have a break to rest our voices.
Yeah. Oh. Josefina Ramon says you should pick up singing. I'm just kidding.
Malo.
Just kidding. I'm just teasing. No, that makes sense though. Like, I'm sure if you had a sore throat, that's probably like one of the worst things that could happen, Ella. You're like, no, not this weekend. Let's go with our lateral raises again.
Nothing as better to sing very loud in the car, lock the windows, and people will look at you, but you are enjoying so much.
Yeah. I still get my windows are not tinted, so I just prefer to sing real loud in the shower. That's my space. But yeah, why not? Just let it all out there. Got 3 more. Alright, once you're done with those, you can go straight into the standing oblique leans. Yeah, usually the whole screaming stuff, there's about 2 or 3 cross-country races or track meets where, yeah, I'm usually not talking the rest of the day, switch. Yeah, especially for track. I mean, for cross-country, there's 2 races, one for the men's, one for the women's, and my voice is gone. It's a 20-minute race, so I'm shouting constantly. But for track, sometimes I have athletes competing in 8 different races, and I see them every lap. So even if they're 100 yards away, that's when I shout even longer. And even at practice too, they can't hear me when they're across the track. So I tell them that I have my man voice that I use sometimes. So I like dig deep and I shout, and my voice it doesn't sound like it's me. But yeah, there's some days where my voice is just gone from screaming at practice, but it's like a healthy scream, not like a mad scream. So, but yeah, that voice does go away. All right, so let's go ahead. We did our shoulders, we did biceps. Let's go ahead and do our underarms or our chest. So we're gonna go underarm front raises, underhand front raises right here. And then since we are working out legs later this week, let's just go ahead and do some bent knee wall raises, wall knees. So again, we're gonna use support of a counter. We're gonna bend our knees, and then we're gonna go here. Okay? That's gonna be for shin splints, for your ankles, for your arches, for your calves. All right, so that's gonna be our next movement. So we're here, and let's begin. So 12 underhand front raises. So who's traveling soon? I know some people are gonna be gone next week. Is it? Are we gonna be missing some of you next week? Ten, 11, and 12. Alright, and then for the second movement, remember these are bent knee wall raises, bent knee calf raises. It's a tongue twister. So again, we're here at a counter, bend your knees, and then heels come up. Give me 15 to 20 of these, okay? So make sure your heels come up as high as you can, and make sure that they're back flat on the floor after. So make sure those knees are bent. 16, going for 15 to 20. Fatigue those out, for sure. Okay. After we're done with this set, we'll go to the chair, do some tricep work, some shoulder work. So everyone's in town. I think the Teresa and Wayne, you guys are leaving, but later, right? Maybe at the end of next weekend. I think Josefina to Lake Tahoe. Remember? Underhand front raises. Ready? And begin. 1. I was able to sneak away from a trip to Fresno next weekend. I was happy about that. It was gonna be a one-day trip to Fresno, but it's gonna be on Saturday. So our last day of summer. But we also have a family party to go to. That's next weekend. I hope it's not hot next Saturday. It's one thing to like be sweaty in like workout clothes, and another thing to be sweaty in like slacks and a button up and a long sleeve. Like, yeah, that's that's the worst. Oh.
So we are traveling to Oxnard this Saturday.
This Saturday?
Yes.
Where to?
Just Oxnard.
Oh, to the Humboldt area?
That's on the 4th.
Okay.
This one is just Oxnard.
Okay. Up there.
Other side of Camarillo, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, out there. Oh, Oxnard.
Yeah.
Got it.
And on the 4th, we go the way to Eureka.
Oh, that'll be pretty. Bend those knees.
We'll be back before the next class starts.
Okay, for the fall. So, bent knee calf raises.
You're going to Oxnard, sir?
This Saturday. You wanna go?
Yes. The Cowboys are there? Not yet.
Just wine.
They're gonna be practice the Cowboys.
Oh, nice. I'll look for them.
Yep.
I'll tell my neighbor, he's a huge Cowboys fan. You're a
We are.
Cowboys fan, Josefina? Had no idea. You watch football. Grab our chair. I used to be a Cowboys fan back in like the 90s when they were winning. I stopped watching much football in college. I think I told this story. I did one. Everyone on the team would do fantasy football, and I did 1 year of fantasy football, and I was super into it. And then I had that was my lowest academic semester ever. So I was usually like a B plus A student, and I think that semester I averaged like C's across my, because I was just watching too much TV that season. We're gonna do our shoulder press. Okay, shoulder press, and then the second movement we're gonna superset is gonna be our tricep extensions. Okay, so those are gonna be our last two movements before the end of this class, because my camera also just records 30 minutes. I forgot to delete some details. So let's go here, and then press, and then down. Make sure those dumbbells make contact with your shoulders. Doing 10 to 12. 3, 4. So let's slow them down a little bit. And remember, between summer and fall, these 2 weeks that we'll get off, if you could manage to find a little bit slightly heavier dumbbells or a kettlebell, maybe resistance bands, let's take advantage. If someone says, Mom or Dad, what do you want for your birthday or for Christmas? And of course you're gonna say, I don't need anything. I have everything I need. I have nothing, there's nothing I need or want. Wrong. There's a heavier kettlebell you could use. There's some heavier dumbbells you could probably work up to. So just ask for those things. Again, if you know they're gonna get you something, instead of expecting that gift card, just get that dumbbell, okay? Because I know some of you probably haven't upgraded your equipment in a while. So, you know, even if it's a 1 pound or 2 pounds heavier, take it. So you could have some variety. So they're not too expensive, so shouldn't be breaking the wallet. Let's go over our head. We're here. And extend. I think for a couple years, someone told me about Amazon wishlist, and I think I just created one. They're like, yeah, I just do my wish list, and when people want to gift me something and I don't know what, I just share that link with them, and you know, they get me something that I actually wanted. And then I was like, hey, that's not a bad idea. So I think during COVID, I used to use that a lot. I had an Amazon wish list, but it was a lot of books. I had so much time to read during COVID. So I think I read, I don't know, I was reading like 2 books a week or something like that. So yeah, so I think my sisters asked me, hey, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm like, get me, like, here's my list, whatever you want. There's books from like $4 all the way to like $25, like whatever you want. So that was very convenient to do. So, but yeah, get some equipment. All right, we're gonna go with our last set here: shoulder presses and tricep extensions. So we're here, and begin. Teresa, Wayne, if I could ask, how long have you folks been married?
$41.
Woo! Nice. Congratulations. I'm about to hit 4 years. And Josefina, Ramon?
I don't know.
You're like, I'm still single. We're gonna do our last set here, okay? Ramon, you still haven't asked her? Ready? Okay, so our last set here. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Oh, very good. I'm gonna stop the recording on my camera because I know that was limited, but